Law enforcement officers have the courage to serve. These men and women put their lives on the line, especially during a routine traffic stop or when directing traffic, where they're easy targets for drunk drivers. Traffic crashes are the leading cause of serious injury and police deaths. When someone chooses to drink and drive, no one is safe, not the strong, brave, or vigilant. An alcohol crash can happen when you least expect it, while being a good Samaritan, responding to a call, or even when driving home after a patrol.
It was February 9th. It wasn't up here in the Northeast. It's usually very cold, snow. We didn't have any of those conditions that night. It was, the temperatures were comparable to being February 9th up in the Northeast, but there was no snow, no roads were dry. My partner and I were coming back from answering an alarm. We were heading east on Route 7. As I approached the intersection with a traffic signal, the light turned red, I started slowing down. I was doing 40, slowing down from 40, so talking to my partner, and at that point, I think we both at the same time, we saw that there was cars facing us going the opposite way in the westbound, stopped at the red light. A car came around the back of those parked cars, stopped cars, and came over into our lane and then lost control and started sliding sideways. I had just enough time to give a quick, oh shit, and he hit us head on from there. And it ended up being an alcohol-related crash. I was knocked unconscious. My partner is the one that I got on the radio, called for help, told the dispatcher we were involved, and got the EMS and et cetera, et cetera.
At 11 o'clock, I finished my shift, got out of uniform, and got in my car, put my seatbelt on, and drove off. The next day I was going to find out if I was having a baby boy or a baby girl. I was 5 months pregnant, and I was too excited. 11:15, my world just started spinning, literally. I was hit head on my way home by a drunk driver.
In the fall, I was working as a patrol officer in the town of Millburn, Short Hills, New Jersey. And we were dispatched to a call, accident with injuries. And I was the first one on the call from the patrol division. And I was placed behind a 4-ton ambulance when my lieutenant got there. And they told the driver, who happened to be the crew chief at the time, not to move the rig until Larry stopped traffic for him. It was a very busy, fast highway near the mall. I was stopping traffic, and the next thing I know, I was airborne. I was hit in the rear end by the 4-ton vehicle, who disregarded the direction of the lieutenant and knocked me 22 feet in midair. He hit me so hard, I came out of my Fry boots. Today I can't figure out how that happens. And the lenses from my frames and my glasses flew out. I was in worse shape, evidently, than the victim, so they took the victim, there was more than one, out of the rig, and they put me in. And I recall driving to the hospital, and very bumpy when he was leaving. He was driving over the cement meridian, the same driver. Lucky we got there in one piece. It was reported or presented that the crew chief had come directly from a party in our town. And it's hard to fathom, but he supposedly had somewhere around 15 drinks or more. He was good and drunk. And they never took him out of that driver's seat. And again, the hypocrisy of it, well, he was the crew chief. And that's who drove, and he continued to drive that night.
On June 10th, a drunk driver turned into the path of my car, which was a Chevy Impala 2006. I swerved to avoid the crash, and the intoxicated driver struck the driver's side of my vehicle, causing my vehicle to leave the roadway and overturn. And while traveling upside down, the vehicle ended up striking some farm equipment in a dealership that was adjacent to the intersection. Luckily for me, I was wearing my seatbelt and suffered very minor injuries with only some lacerations in the top of my head. So when I finally figured out how to exit the vehicle and crawled out through the driver's side window, I had heard someone outside the vehicle yelling while I was trying to get out. And when I got out, I encountered the intoxicated driver of the other vehicle. And he hugged me, and I hugged him because I was thankful to be out of the vehicle and seemingly okay, and we embraced. He thanked God that I was alive, and I did the same thing in my mind. And then, like I said, that is when I could tell that he'd been drinking by the odor on his breath and on his person, and then continued to talk with him and could see for certain that he was intoxicated.
Investigator Gerhardt's crash was at a huge music fest that was once held in a particular location in our town. One of the big radio stations would have it. I was at the venue, inside, not in the parking lot, but I was doing security towards the back. There was a back entrance, and I was back there. Investigator Gerhardt was doing mainstream traffic. He's actually a traffic investigator, so they let him out there and do it where, you know, the most of the traffic comes and flows through.
The Mazda entered the intersection at about 35 miles an hour, never applied his brakes, struck me. Due to the speed of the vehicle, I was propelled across the hood, my body hitting the windshield, getting caught on the roof line of the car, the A-pillar, my head striking the roof line, and my body catapulted over the roof of the car, off the trunk deck and onto the roadway. I slid a distance and I was unconscious, of course. I came to rest on top of a lit highway flare. James Van Voorst, who was the young man who hit me, was traveling that evening with his sister. He stated in a probation report that upon hitting me, he turned to his sister and said, "I just hit a cop." And her response was, "So?"
It was less than 2 years since I joined the New York State Police that I was on patrol on 4th of July of all nights, and it was a nice hot summer night, and my partner and I had stopped a car. It was a little after midnight, stopped her for speeding, and during the course of the traffic stop, my partner was writing the operator a summons when all of a sudden I blacked out, and I have no idea what had happened to me. The next thing I knew, I had come to, and I was sitting on a guide rail with an EMT holding me under each arm like this, saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" When I had asked what happened, they told me I had been hit by a drunken driver.
DWI affects everyone. Putting a badge on doesn't make you any less human, does not let you suffer any less. You're still a human being, you're flesh and bone and blood, and you're capable of being injured deeply, whether it be psychological or physical. Upon my visit one day to the doctor's office, who was, as I stated, like the clearinghouse, he informed me that I was not going to be allowed to return. I was told that day that a career I loved, and to this day I miss, was gone. That I'd never put my uniform on again, not to do something I loved. That really hurt. That was the most painful thing of the entire crash, to lose my career. Could have been worse. My family could have lost me. They didn't. But next to that, losing my career was the most painful thing.
This experience happened to me with less than 2 years on the job, and it was quite an eye-opener for me that how easy it could be to lose your life in the line of duty when during the course of something as simple as a traffic stop. On patrol on the interstate, I would do 10 to 15 traffic stops a day, and this traffic stop was no different from any other one. It just so happened that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I got struck by a drunk driver. It was definitely an eye-opener to me of just how fragile one can be, and how dangerous being a police officer is. Everybody says that, you know, it's a tough job and that, you know, you're really risking your life. But it really hit home for me when this had happened. And I realized that those weren't just catchphrases and anecdotes. Being a police officer is a very dangerous job, especially being on the highway.
I never wore a seatbelt. Didn't believe in them. I was the kind of guy, geez, you're going to get in a crash, you're going to get trapped. If the car catches fire, you'll never get out. If it rolls over, you're going to get stuck. And I firmly believe that. I think that I know that the fact that the department passed the policy for us to wear seatbelts certainly saved my life. With the seatbelt on, though, I was spared a lot of injury. I was probably spared my life, to be quite honest with you. And it's just been, it hasn't even been a second thought now from that day on just to get in and put a seatbelt on. And making sure that people in my car wear a seatbelt too. Whether it's my personal car, whether it's a police car, everyone's belted in.
I always wear my seatbelt. I don't put that car in drive without putting my seatbelt on. And it's funny because I always pull on it to make sure that it clicks, because every once in a while it doesn't click. And I always tug on it to make sure. And it's funny because out of habit, while I'm driving, I double check. Seatbelts save lives. And that night, that seatbelt did its job. It saved my life. It saved my baby's life. I would put my seatbelt on and kind of slide it underneath my belly to make sure that it didn't press down on the baby, because I didn't want to squish him or her. But a bump wasn't going to keep me from not wearing my seatbelt. That just reinforced me, you better put on your seatbelt, because it's not just one, it's two lives that seatbelt is saving. And I wasn't going to compromise that. I love my baby way too much.
It was an eye-opener to me as to how easy something like this can happen to the general public. Without warning, you know, this individual turned into the path of my vehicle, and I had nowhere to go, and could not avoid a collision with his vehicle. So, you know, the crash was severe, but the injuries were minor because of the seatbelt.
Really, it woke me up years ago, probably at the time of my crash, that this problem is not going away anytime soon. As a matter of fact, I think it's the police have to worry about trying to keep this problem contained, which just doesn't seem, it's very hard to put a handle on whether it's contained or not, because people still today with the penalties, the fatalities they're causing, the deaths, people are still out there drinking and driving.
Throughout my career, I had always been very active in DWI enforcement. It's hard to believe that after all these years, there are still people out there that don't get the message, that will still drink and get behind the wheel and drive seemingly without any concern.
For a long time, I thought about how can I make this better and what can I do to make a difference. And then it dawned on me that I'm a New York State trooper, and I had dedicated my career to arresting intoxicated and drunken drivers. And I enforced those laws aggressively, knowing that hopefully I had saved some lives.
I can care less about a drunk. You want to kill yourself, knock yourself out. Do it in your backyard. I think I'm angrier at the courts because the courts see these people over and over and over again. I'm trying to keep a safe road out there. I'm trying our public to be safe and to be able to drive. I want our public to be able to put their little kids in their cars, drive out for ice cream, and know that they're going to come home and not have to worry that some idiot drunk is going to take that away from them. You don't know what you're going to get out there on the road. The courts need to do something, because it's not right that families have to worry that another Scott Dixon's going to go out there and kill their family. Because usually that's how it goes. The drunk walks away, and the rest of the family, you're just doing a body count.
I had the courage to serve as a police officer, the will to serve, the desire to serve. I can no longer serve because a drunk driver took that away from me.